Hello and welcome to Macro Mondays here on Landy's Crypto Corner. Today is April 28th, 2025, and we're looking at Bitcoin here on the weekly to start with. Main reason why? Well, we got what we wanted to see from last week's and weeks prior that we've been talking about for quite some time, at least for the past couple of weeks. And that is a break of the downtrend here at 88,800, a reclaim of $89,000. And we even got a bonus. We got to close above the higher low, the last weekly higher low close open here at 93.5, with the actual close coming in at 93,780. So nice move from Bitcoin off of this lower low that is now fully confirmed on a swing and a close. And there's really basically, in terms of trend, three scenarios that we can kind of play out here. And it really doesn't matter if this is going to be the high or if the high is much higher. It doesn't matter if it's new all-time highs, if it's in the range over here or right here, right now. But we have some scenarios that we can kind of spec out here. And that is that after seeing a trend break like this, we're just going to, for example, say that this is the high. It could be much higher. In fact, let's go higher. Let's go up here to the upper second, just for an example. What we're looking for from here is a higher low and then a higher high from there. So what that would be is a on the higher low, wherever this high comes in, doesn't matter if it's up here or if it's right here, we need to see a higher low, right? And in that case, what we'd be looking for upon seeing any higher low as it relates to the lower low post trend break would be a reversal setup. Then we'd be looking for this to confirm on any closes above the higher high, whether it be here or higher, like by the upper second. And in this case, it could be likely, right? We don't know. No one knows. And anybody that tells you that they do is just giving you either an informed or uninformed opinion, right? No one can really tell you from here what is actually going to play out, but some are going to be more bearish and they're going to have informed takes on why they're bearish. Some are just going to be bearish to be bearish and maybe not have informed takes. You gotta just follow along with whoever you feel is giving you the best look at price, right? And in this case, the other scenario that would be bullish would be some sort of a higher low or a higher high equal low kind of a structure, something like that, right? So that would be bullish as well. And again, you'd have to see the lows put in. That's kind of your double bottom scenario, kind of like your double tops. That would be what you'd be on the lookout for if you're bullish. Or if you're bearish, you're looking for this to become a deviation and turn into a downside move by breaking below the most recent lows, right? So that's where we would have a bearish scenario. So those are the three major scenarios to look out for trend, right? Higher low, and on any kind of higher low, you're looking at the trend reversal setup, and then you're looking for it to break the most recent high, whether it's here or higher. Equal lows from here, wherever it puts in a high, whether it's here or higher. From there, you need to see it taken out. That'd be bullish. Otherwise, we'd be looking for the third scenario, which would be the bearish one. At least from here, this can evolve over time into different types of scenarios. But right from here, right now, these are the three major ones to look out for. And that's a high that's put in that then takes out the last low and gets its continuation down lower. A few other things to point out here. So we've talked a little bit about trend. In terms of support and resistance, Bitcoin had the area that it just reclaimed was essentially this, it was the areas that we needed to see reclaimed. It was the higher low and a close open, which incorporates this this higher low swing at 89. And essentially that lower high, you can call it 89. It was 89 on some derivative exchanges or perp exchanges. It is 88.8 here, but either way, we got that area as an area that upon retest, we would want to see it as support, but technically speaking, Bitcoin does have room to the lower first in terms of volatility. So terms of support and resistance, Bitcoin is right up against some close open resistance and even swung up to it at that $96,000 as well. We'll look at that on the daily in just a moment, but from a volatility standpoint, being above the basis, bullish half of the band, as long as it's closing in here, more likely to test towards the upper first here, which is at 98. By the way, if this candle continues to push up, which we're going to look at some stuff in some lower term time frames, like a 4 and 6 hour in just a moment at the compression, but that's likely going to be around $99.5 to $100,000. You'll see the confluences there as well. Upper second would likely end up around 106, and the upper third, of course, above the all-time high, there would likely be around 113, 114 or more if Bitcoin did just kind of trek right up there from right here, right now. Not saying that any of that's going to happen, but just in terms of areas of interest. Now, I will tell you that realistically, we're going to look at some zones of interest of what I would like to see Bitcoin flip from a technical standpoint. It's the close open of the lower high is the area that a lot of people are going to look at as support. I would also look at that as an area of viability. That's at $86,000, right? That's at $86,000 on the close open. That would give it some room. So retests down. I'll refine that actually in some lower term timeframes, but we'll see how this kind of fits into the daily. Wouldn't want to see any closes below there. Otherwise, I do think that Bitcoin's more likely to go back and retest the lows. And then we could be on the lookout for higher low, equal low structure from there if that were to happen. As it stands right now, Bitcoin's in a solid position. That doesn't mean it's going to stay in a solid position though. So we can do a little bit more investigating here on the weekly. And that would be in terms of RSI. Understand that, right around this last higher high swing, which was a lower high close, we have this high on RSI, and then we have the high prior, which was a lower high or a higher high close, but a lower high swing on RSI. And we've got some pretty important levels. I told you I was going to tell you what those levels were last week, so we're going to do that right now. And in terms of an area where Bitcoin could avoid bearish divergence off of this high, because bearish divergence is out on this high down here. But you could see bearish divergence on any closes below 68.21. So you basically need 69 RSI read. But what would that imply in terms of price? We can actually get that with this fancy dancy indicator. Let's go ahead. So we want to take the bullish control zone. We're just going to move that up to 69. Nice. That is not reflecting on the chart here for some reason visually, but I do think it did reflect on the actual readout over here. So it'd be 114,250. And let me just double check that is set. So if we were to bring this back to a 62, 62 is 97. So that would be where the edge of the bullish control zone is right now. But if we were to take it to what price would need to beat to avoid a bearish divergence here, it would need to be a 69, not 59, sorry. And that would be $114,000. So that would, trading up around $114,000, $115,000, obviously be on new all-time highs. It would also avoid bearish divergence from that lower high close, but there would still be the higher high close to pay attention to, and that's going to be up at a what read? That is going to be, so we would need to see closes above 79. So 79, we can just take the critical zone down. So we'll reset this back to its normal settings. We'll bring this to a 79 just to get a reading on what price that would be. We'd be looking at about $150,000. That does mean that Bitcoin can still make higher highs below 114 and throw bearish divergence, right? And it can still make higher highs all the way up to around $150,000 or just shy of $150,000 if it doesn't get above those reads. Like above 150, it could still throw bearish divergence off of the current RSI structure. So that's something that I wanted to point out, because let's say Bitcoin, does climb up to some of those levels, we still have to watch out for bearish divergence from those two highs, right? At 114,250 and 149,825. So essentially we would need to see, basically $115,000 close that would avoid bearish divergence off of that other high, but could still throw bearish divergence from this high up here unless it starts closing above 150 essentially. Does that mean that it's over? No, in fact. There's still a lot of bearish divergence that can still be built all the way back to 2024, but the most powerful bearish divergence would be on any trending move, meaning that we shift from a downtrend, right? And don't just get a deviation, right? And then throw bearish divergence, but get an uptrend going. So higher lows, higher highs from here. That's where in that particular trend, and we can just take an example. Again, this is just an example. I got to be very clear because I get some people like, wait, you said it was going to. No, this is just an example. Let's say this is an uptrending structure, right? On an uptrending structure, it would be with the most powerful divergences will be within that structure. Yes. Do hidden bear divs and bear divs from prior structures still count? Yeah, they're not as powerful as in structure. So that's just something to be aware of. The other thing that we should check on here is where the lower second is, because this would be any closes below the lower second, at 77,533. So that's where we have to start paying attention. Any closes below there would be below the closing low here, targeting that swing low and possibly lower. But real true expansion on the weekly wouldn't kick off until we saw closes below both the lower second and the low, right? So below 77.5 and the low at 74,420.69. Nice. And again, to the upside, closes above the upper second at 105,871 would still need to close above the all-time high to kick off true expansion on the weekly as well. So that's just, right now, Bitcoin's got some work to do. We want to see some structure built, see where the next weekly high comes in, and evaluate, because it's in between. It's in between trends, kind of like where we were back here when Bitcoin was trending down last year. Many of you might have remembered that we were looking at the higher low swing, right? Higher low wick or swing with the lower low close here. And what do we need to see from here? We need to see closes back above the lower high at 65. We got that. Closed above and even put in a higher high at 66,550. And then what did we need to see? Higher low close or swing from there, or equal low close or swing from there to start looking at this as a bullish reversal setup on the weekly. Higher high, we got the higher low, boom, up after closing above the upper second and the 73,835. Then at that point, the all-time high, right? And then we got our expansion up. So essentially the same kind of thing in the bullish scenario is what you'd want to be looking for here. Not necessarily playing out that way, but that would be a nice classical way of looking at it. But higher low, equal low structure, or this turns into a deviation of this downtrend, right? So other than that, it's consolidation, right? This thing could go sideways. So there's always that stuff too. But we can look at momentum here on the weekly. We can see that even out of that prior consolidation range, Bitcoin was coming off of the overbought area. So this is a regular Stochh, not a Stochh RSI. Stochh RSI is the velocity of the RSI indicator that we just looked at. This is the regular Stochh, which is close over close price momentum. In this case, we saw, coming out of that prior range last year, Bitcoin was not, it was just tapping on the bearish control zone. We're inside of the bearish control zone. And for regular Stochh, this actually matters. We do have a giant divergence between these two lows on momentum here, so that should be noted, but it doesn't do much until we start seeing higher low, equal low structure, right? Doesn't really matter how high the price goes, even if it goes to new all-time highs. If it breaks down below the lows, cooked, right? Or we start looking and evaluating other types of scenarios that need to play out for it to stay bullish. But in this case, this is coming from the oversold zone on this side. So, there is potential here. 80,740 is going to be the momentum pivot on the weekly as well. So, for as bearish as I would want to be in this area from some of the more macro picture, one, we're still in a macro uptrend on the monthly, but like looking for swings of the high like last cycle, not quite convinced yet, because this could potentially turn into a run that could go significantly higher before actually, kind of calling the macro top, right? But in this case, looks like the Bulls have an opportunity, and it looks like the Bears have an opportunity. And why? Because when the trend is your friend, we all follow the trend, and the trend is our friend until the end of the trend, right? So we had higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high. That was a beautiful trend. Higher low, higher high. Oh no, now we have the end of the trend. And then now we got the trend reversal set up here, but it didn't get the follow through and then a trend break like this. So the trend is your friend until the end of the trend. And when there is no trend, like you just get a trend break, when it's trendless like this, everyone's in fear, right? So I think the saying goes, the trend is your friend until the end of the trend. When the trend is unclear, everyone's in fear. And that's, I don't think there's a lot of people too in fear. I mean, if you've been following this stuff pretty regularly, you shouldn't be in fear, but definitely there is uncertainty. And that's where we just wait for our confirmation conditions, because the Bulls have a lot of points on their side, and then so do the Bears on theirs. But, I would say I lean more towards the macro trend. This is just another higher low, especially on closes. And this is something to pay attention to this week, by the way. Closes above 95,128 will set this higher low on a closing basis. I think no matter what, the swing is going to be set as long as the candle's green. But this would just be another higher low. Got a higher high and a higher low. And I can't fade an uptrend until I start seeing that uptrend start to break down. And of course, we'll monitor that on the weekly. So, looks good for now. We're going to be talking a lot about the monthly here this week because we do have the monthly close on Wednesday. So we'll be talking about that on the Wednesday check-in. Let's go ahead and take a look at the daily. Daily looks like a little bit of a swing uptrend still in place here. We had the swing higher high, had a swing higher high, swing higher low, swing higher high. We could get another, though this is a swing higher low as it stands right now. But nothing's confirmed until we see price really trading back above right around $96,000. So let's go ahead and turn on for the daily here the local support and resistance areas. And we can see that, much like we discussed on Friday, we had the consolidation breakdown area retested directly, not just on the bottom side like we got back here in early March, where we had the, let's get rid of the swing indicator here. And now we're going to keep on the Bollinger Bands, but we had the compression, we had the sideways price action right around 95, 96 with a lot of common closes and above there as well up to the 97, 98 level. But realistically, it was basing around $95,000 to $96,000. We got to test directly into that area right where the compression came in prior to the breakdown. If Bitcoin does start to push above there, you can see that the upper second standard deviation is right there at 98.5. And that is the close open up here, right around that close open that put in the high at 99.5. If we start to see price really break out and trade above there, I think 100K is fair game to the 101 area at minimum. You can see that if it really started to push and got really volatile to the upside, upper thirds right there at the 104 area. To the downside, we have the upper first confluent with that weekly higher low close at 93.5. If that is lost, bulls want to see this range right here, 88.7 to 92K hold up. Got the basis band sliding in right under there as an area of interest as well. So in the lower 88 region, you could extend this 92 to 88 by the basis band. Fair game to the downside should we start to see price start to lose 93.5. Pay attention to the top side. Bitcoin found two lows on the daily down there right around 92, upper 91 region. If it starts to fall apart, look to that 88 to 88.7 here by the 1.168. Anywhere below there, just be aware of $85,000 to $86,000. Basically, the top side of the candles here by our red line, that first post-expansion bear candle from the prior range last year, that wick low was at 85, was an inflection point on the consolidation. Something I want to point out here on some lower term time frames before we'll get into this. So let's go to the 4 hour real quick here, because I want to point out that we are in a nice compression. So we saw the compression over here, the expansion up to 85, and then consolidation around it. We had Bollinger Band expansion, price volatility expansion as denoted by the Bollinger Bands here, and then compression, nice expansion up into resistance, through it, continuation, and then finally it's been sitting on that weekly higher low close open at 93.5 and back in compression. We can see this also with the 6 hour compression, expansion, compression. Compression is not indicative of direction. It just means that we're looking at probably a pretty big move coming up here pretty soon. And we even see the 8 hour starting to get some really good compression. We had the compression, expansion, now we're back into compression. So, if we start to see, for instance, like 8 hour candles closing above 96, we're going to expand up, right? Doesn't mean that it can't start off an expansion and immediately reverse, but if we're starting to get follow through on like an 8 hour, will look pretty good. I think we will be limited by where some of the bands are on the daily though. Same for the 4 hour expansion above, still needs to get above the swings here, and there's a whole lot of resistance overhead. So beware of, expansion in and then right back down to reject. So, basically being above 95 to 96 here, you want to see it holding, right, on any kind of retests back down for continued expansion up. And to the downside, expansion is going to really begin below the Sunday low at around 92.8, but that would be expansion into this big area of support. Again, got to watch the low 92s, upper 91s, because otherwise it would be expansion in to retest this area as support in earnest, not just the top side. So I'm watching the 4, 6, and 8 hour. I can tell you the daily, we do have momentum flopping over here as Bitcoin's been going sideways essentially since Wednesday of last week. But if we do, for regular stoke, this can stay up here for a while. It can also get nice bullish resets. What would it take to turn this back up? 95,381, would turn this back up. I would say as long as it's above 93.5, it's looking good. Above 92 is fine. Otherwise, we're looking for it to head back down, and retest, some of the areas on the daily and weekly down here from that high, essentially that $88,700, $89,000. So, and it can test down pretty safely. I mean, it doesn't do much until we see closes below there. Then we got to pay very close attention to $85,000, $86,000. So it's kind of my take on price action right now. The upside's still available to the bulls, so just be aware. It might seem improbable, but if we start to see expansion above 96, especially, 98 to 100K, maybe even 101 up here, gets really crazy. You could see 104. I think that's a little less likely, but I've seen crazier things happen, as have many of you. So let's go ahead and just check in on the Solana chart here and Ethereum charts. We're going to start with Ethereum, 1800. It's holding. Rejecting off this low here at 18, right around that upper second, 1875. Above there, fair game to probably try to test up towards 1956 to 2K, somewhere around that upper third. Otherwise, beware of breaking back below 1800 and dropping the low here at 1745 or so. Beware that this higher low right here on a swing is fair game at 1723 all the way down to the basis band. In terms of volatility, you got to pay attention to in the upper 1600s at 1670 or so, 1669. Nice. And if it gets anywhere below there, it's testing where the move originated from, at 1600 and below, down to that support, even at 1500 is fair game. Solana looking good, trying to hold support here at the man, right at that 147.60, just trying to close open right on it, right? So this was the criteria. I wanted to see the 147 to 150 area break. We got a swing of it. We didn't get a close above 153 here. I think if we start to see that, especially above the Monday high here, I think it's going to start running the highs at 157. And I think it's fair game to start looking into, 160 is fair game all the way up to that 169, 170 area by the upper third. Now, if this does start to break down below the low here at 144.69, the memes are everywhere. Pay attention to the basis band and the next low, somewhere around the 140 to 130, 133 in this case area. Otherwise, it's back down to retest the lower first there, right on the support that we saw being held here at around 125, 126. So that's kind of my take on that. If we're going to look at weeklies, it's a nice higher high swing. Still need to see higher low structure, equal low structure build from here. Same as like on Ethereum. We'll look at that in just a moment. Weekly is going to remain up on momentum above 106. Ethereum is going to remain up above 1473. A fair ways away from there, but Ethereum's got to break its swing it right at that 2100, and still needs to reclaim this low at 23. Man, this was such an area, such an important area. So I think that Solana's in a better position on a swing basis right now, but they're about on equal footing in terms of opportunity. Still need to see higher low, equal low structure for Solana. We need to start seeing Ethereum dig itself out of this 1800 area and really start to make an earnest push towards, right by the lower first too. So this could end up very bearish if Bitcoin turns. We're looking at the lows again for Ethereum, to be quite honest. But if it can push above, 21 to 2300 is the area for Ethereum. Definitely in a weaker position right now in terms of price action, but Solana also has to dig itself out. Its last high was a lower high close with a higher high swing. So, it's not really pretty for the alts. I mean, I wouldn't even say it's pretty for Bitcoin right now, but I think Bitcoin is the cleanest in terms of, it's the cleanest trading chart, that's for sure, but it's also the cleanest in terms of structural setup. So, I think what to pay attention to over the coming days. I mean, tomorrow, what do we got? We've got unemployment rate, ISM coming out. We have GDP coming out on the 30th, which is on Wednesday, and I'll talk to you after the monthly close there, after that Wednesday candle close. And then next week, or this end of this week into next week, the beginning of the month, it's all about the economic data, in my opinion. And then we kind of got to look at what's happening in traditional markets to gauge, kind of where things are and where liquidity might flow. If things are looking like we're heading into a recession and the tariffs have had like a really bad impact on some of the economic numbers, because this will be the first economic numbers where we actually have some results based on what's happening with the tariffs. Then we can kind of make some more educated analysis on what's more likely and what's not. But still, price structure is king. It's always going to tell us first. The setups available, though, right now across the board are uncertain. They're changing, right? So, I would say generally, bulls have something to be optimistic about, and bears have potential opportunity on the board. So no one knows who's going to be right at this very moment, but the picture will start to become very clear very soon. You have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. With all that being said, nighty out. Take care.